Hello, everyone, and welcome to the City of Derry International Choir Festival 2022. This is our 10th edition, and we're very excited to be welcoming all of you, as well as our supporters worldwide, but most importantly, live visitors to the city for the first time in 2 years for our choir festival, a celebration of singing that is going to have the streets come alive with music over the next 5 days. But traditionally, since 2013, since our first festival, we always begin with an educational focus and a discussion panel with various topics over the years. And I'm absolutely delighted that this year we have welcomed a truly international panel of conversationalists that are going to share their experiences with us over the next 90 minutes or so. The theme today is social cohesion and inclusion through singing. I would encourage you to comment if you hear anything of interest or that you want to contribute to, and we will allow time at the end for those comments to be addressed. But without further ado, let me welcome our esteemed chair, Professor of Music at the Ulster University, Brian Irvine, who will in turn introduce the panel. Brian.
Brian, you're muted.
Sorry about that, folks. Technical issues straight away. We're all used to that on Zoom. I'd just like to say, Donald, it's fantastic. Thank you for having me as part of this. I know this is a subject matter that is dear to all our hearts, and I know that the panel are involved in so many different aspects of singing and are very committed to the whole relationship that it has to society and to its kind of role in connecting people and communities together. I think the best thing I can do is really, I'll let the panel introduce themselves. So I'll maybe just call upon Barkev and Roula, if you maybe just give a short introduction just about yourself and the organization that you're connected to.
Hello, my name is Barkev Taslakian. I'm Lebanese. I'm the founder and the main conductor of Fayha National Choir. We became the national choir of Lebanon before 3 months for Fayha Choir, the first a cappella singing choir in the Arab world.
Oh, fantastic!
And I am Roula Abou Baker. I'm a singer and the manager of this choir.
Fantastic to have you on board, you guys. I'm just going to quickly scoot over to Carmel. Maybe you could just say a few words, Carmel, about yourself and your organization.
Of course. I'm very lucky to be a musical director based in Dublin City, and I've worked with a number, I suppose, of social inclusion projects, including the High Hopes Choir. I've worked with the Doka Centre in Mountjoy Prison. I'm the former director of Discovery Gospel Choir, but I suppose I'm here under many hats and many umbrellas.
I suspect that's quite like the rest of the panel. I'm sure wearing different hats at different ways of working with your singers and so on. But and Justine, could you say a few words about yourself and your organization?
Yeah. My name is Justine Nantale, from Uganda originally, and I'm wearing different hats as well. So I'm a founding member of the Discovery Gospel Choir. I'm here with Gomba Educare. It's a new initiative, school outreach in schools, awareness about social inclusion, interculturalism, and world cultures. So I look forward to the conversation here today.
Wonderful, thank you. And Shane, could you say a few words?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, thank you for having me. So yes, I like everyone else, I have multiple hats. I sing in the Pink Singers, which is an LGBT choir based in London. I'm from Singapore myself. I set up a couple of LGBT choir networks. One, Proud Voices UK and Ireland, based here in the UK and Ireland, consisting of 57 choir members. And then another one called Proud Voices Asia, which has 37 choirs in the continent of Asia. So yeah, I love to talk about sort of building communities through music.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shane. And Dermot, last but not least.
Thanks, Brian, and hello, everybody. Like everyone, actually, I have a couple of hats here today. I suppose first and foremost, I'm here as CEO of Sing Ireland and really interested, I suppose, in the policy development side, and more important than that, the action that can be taken to see change in society. And I know how powerful singing can be as a conduit for social cohesion. So this is a fascinating topic today, and really look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts. And I suppose the other hat I'm wearing is as president of the European Choral Association. So delighted to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dermot. So as you can probably tell, we have a sort of very far-reaching, eclectic, highly experienced, beautiful bunch of people connected with singing. So I think the way this is going to work, for those who are just joining us, the way this is going to work is I'm going to call upon some of the panel members to just give a short presentation just about their work, how their work fits into our idea of social inclusion and social cohesion and inclusion, how it connects to that theme, and we'll be taking. Feel free to kind of comment in the little chat menu. We have the fantastic Rory and Fiona who'll be collecting these comments, and we hope to kind of bring it all together in some sort of discussion towards the end. It's quite free flowing, but I'm going to call upon the panel members just to kind of give a little short presentation on the work that they do and how they're engaged in our wonderful singing network. So maybe I could start with Barkev and Roula.
Yes, hello. So today we're going to tell you about Fayha National Choir, about two aspects of this choir. The first one is how we succeeded to include the concept of choral singing in the Arab countries and in Lebanon, and then how we used this concept to interfere in many social, psychosocial problems in a country like Lebanon. So we will start with Maestro Barkev Taslakian, who will tell us about how the idea came and how it was, what were the challenges also to include a new culture, a totally new culture, the choral singing in the Arab society.
Yes, I will talk shortly about the history. The choral singing was in the Arab countries, in the Armenian regions only. And I had a choir in a village called Anjar. There are 100% Armenians in Lebanon. They are all Lebanese, originally Armenians. We had a concert in the north of Lebanon, Tripoli, and for the Armenians there, and some non-Armenians heard that and asked to build a choir there. And I started, it was a very big challenge to start an a cappella choir and singing four voices, but in Arabic language. There were many challenges because in the Arabic language, there were strict rules to sing. And we created new techniques, how to pronounce, how to sing, to bring the voices together, to harmonize it. And the other challenge was in Lebanon, we have 18 religions here. We are very proud of it, but sometimes it's a problem, especially the politicians, they create problems. They use this thing. And at the beginning, first year, I got several messages from the Islamists. There were some fanatic Islamists in Tripoli, and they frightened me, and they yes, because music is haram. It's not good. Then they realized that it's good music, and they asked for help. And I went there and I started to work with them and help them how to develop the Islamic music. The Fayha Choir has been 20 years working, non-stop working. We have several targets. One of the targets is to develop the Arabic music, not to change it. We started to sing with harmony because the Arabic music is based on monodic. And we were very curious to not change this, to not westernize the music, to create a real Arabic. Now we will let you listen how we sing in Arabic. Sorry for my English. And the other target was to spread this music everywhere. We started to write our music from the left to right using Latin letters to let foreign people sing in Arabic. And now we have a very big archive of Arabic choral music, and it's for free for everybody who asks to sing. And we own the rights of the arrangements. And the second branch was in Beirut in 2015 or 16. And the third branch was in Cairo, because we believe Cairo is a very huge country, and we wanted to implement the a cappella singing there. We worked 2 years in Cairo, and now the work is going on there. We have several choirs in Cairo trying to sing a cappella. The third branch was in Shuf region in Lebanon. In Lebanon, we have now 3 branches. The 3 branches, every branch rehearses 3 days per week, and we are non-stop choir. We don't take breaks. 12 months per year we work, even in the holidays, and twice or 3 times per month we make joint rehearsals. We have been everywhere in the world, showing that how we can find in common things via singing. We believe that the music is the most powerful weapon to bring people together. And now we are trying to spread this in other Arab countries like Morocco, Jordan, so even in Saudi Arabia now we have choirs, because to keep the sustainability, we have a problem. We don't have conductors. Fayha Choir has now 9 conductors that they work with choirs everywhere. Unfortunately, in our schools in the Arab countries, we don't have conducting classes. We don't have professional conductors. Without conductors, you can't have choirs. Now we are creating conductors. One of them, I think he's listening to us. He was a jihadist, and now he became a choir conductor. And
it happened that he joined, because I just shared the link with the choir. So I would really love to invite him if he is still here. Mahmoud Nawas, he is one of the assistant conductors of Fayha Choir, and he's one of our success stories also, because he was really in a group of jihadists, and now he became a choir conductor. Are you here, Mahmoud? I think
Mahmoud is not here. Okay. I will, in a short time, I will let you know what are the challenges in singing in Arabic. Usually, we open our mouths vertically when we sing to build harmony. But in Arabic, we should use horizontally our mouths. It's very difficult to bring voices together. And another, we have several letters in the Arab language coming from here, like other than Arabs, I think it's very difficult to pronounce it. And coming from here, it's very difficult. And the most difficult thing is in the Arab music, we use quarter tones. The international music is built on half tones, and it was a very big challenge to create harmony using the quarter tones. Several people tried to do it in the 20th century, but at last it's a historical thing. I think we succeeded to find a way using the international harmony and adapting it in the Arabic. And even when we sing, it smells Arabic using the polyphonic music. Sorry for my English. I hope you. Okay. And now I think Roula. I can't sing it.
No, not sing, but show them.
Yes, let me show you one song if you. Can I?
Yes, of course.
I
Please
will share.
And feel free to sing if you want.
I can't do it. I am originally Armenian. Okay, I will share, Meg. You can find our songs on, for instance, I will show you Sa. Sa, it means the clock. Sa, it's that like the major scale, but the third is, and the seventh, it's quarter tone lower, not half tone.
أرتدي آخر شكل ساحل من طيف عام
I'm not sure if everyone is getting the sound through. Would I be correct in that assumption? Barkev, I think we got quite a lot of that. I think there's obviously issues with sound in relation to Zoom, which is just the most frustrating thing about it. But I think we totally got the essence of what you're doing there. Just before I kind of I honestly, I could listen to you all day talking about the way that you engage with your choirs and so on. And I think what I'll do is, if you're happy enough to move on, we'll maybe come back, because I'm sure there are a wealth of kind of questions and things that people would like to ask you about your choir. I know I have 100 things I'd like to ask you, but and I would like to just sort of pick up on one of the things that you said there, which I thought was really beautiful actually, and that was just a simple line that singing is the most powerful weapon for bringing people together. And I think that's such a brilliant kind of summary of what singing is all about in many ways. I just wanted to say, have you anything just that you wanted to say there before? Maybe I've cut you off in your prime, but if there's anything else that you want to just chip in there with before we maybe move on?
No, I want Roula to tell you about the social projects that we do in Lebanon and abroad with the Syrian refugees,
brilliant.
with the Palestinian refugees. You know, we have 4.5 million Lebanese living in Lebanon, and we have like 2 million Syrian refugees now, and 500,000 Palestinian refugees. They are waiting for permission to return back to Palestine. We are dealing with them. Roula?
Exactly. So as Maestro said, we have a very small country with big, 18 sects, many nationalities, Syrian, Palestinian, Iraqi, and others. We have a history of 25 years of civil war, of attacks from Israel. We have a lot of problems in one very, very small country. So when we started with Fayha Choir, it showed a big success for a small group who included people from different backgrounds, religious, political, geographic. So we wanted to profit from this and to do this kind of project and with other, like we worked with UNESCO, we worked with the UNDP, with the GIZ, with the Norwegian Refugee Council on psychosocial support projects and peace building projects all over Lebanon. We have, for example, one of our last actually project is Angham wa Salam choir, which means melodies and peace choir, and it gathered 120 youth from all Lebanon, and it was like the first time in their life they sing, and they started singing a cappella in Arabic. So from everywhere they came, and they found a lot of common things, although they came from different backgrounds, and it was really a life-changing project for them. And I would like to show you a small documentary about this project we did. So if we can show the documentary about Angham wa Salam Choir with the UNDP Peace Building Project.
It's in Arabic, but translated.
There's a subtitle.
Let me...
برنامج الأمم المتحدة الإنمائي بدعم من البنك الألماني للتنمية بالشراكة مع كورال فيحاء قرروا يكونوا عم يشتغلوا على كورال أنغام وسلام بتضم شباب وصبايا كبار وصغار من كافة المناطق المحلية ومن جنسيات مختلفة. اليوم بظل كل التحديات اللي عم يعيشها البلد قرروا يقولوا إنه في أمل تعليمي وإنه الموسيقى والفن هو شيء بيقدر يجمعهم.
خايفين حتى يخلص، عن جد مساعدينهم انه نخلص هذا الشيء لانه هن بيقولون احد الاحد، يعني انا في ناس كل الجمعه بدي بس بنطر يجي هذا النهار الاحد هو بيقول هذا اجمل شيء عمله بحياته.
اول اتجاه كان انه نستقطب شباب وصبايا ونشوف هن ضمن طموحاتهم وضمن المواهب اللي هن بحبوها عم يكون عم يتنظم مشاريع او برامج بتستقطبهم وبتعزز قدراتهم بتنمي مواهبهم.
صار عندي معارف تقريبا بكل لبنان وهذا الشيء لإلي كثير منيح. صرنا مثل عائله صغيره عم نتفق نصنع مسرحيه، عم نتفق ندخل عم نطلع الموبايل.
هذه ثاني مره بشوف مثلا فرع لقاء كاني صار لي سنين بعرف. صرنا عم نتعلم كثير مش بس على الصعيد الفني، على صعيد الاداء، على صعيد القيادي.
ومن المايسترو تعلمت اكيد كيف اني اوثق بحالي. تقيم خلقنا مساحات امنه يلي نحن بنفتقر لها بلبنان.
الكورال مش افراد عم بيغنوا مجتمعين مفروض يوحدوا اصواتهم يطلع صوت واحد كل واحد. هيدا دمج الاصوات نوصل على مستوى انه عم بيحطوا ايد فعلا.
So this was one of our projects. It was the last. We also worked a lot with.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
No, that was great.
Yeah, this was one of our projects, as I said. So and the way how to do this, there's something really special for Fayha Choir doing this, is that we don't. It's not something you can read in a book. It's you really live it. And our conductor is someone who came from a refugee family, so he knows what what these people need, and he tried to do it by heart and with love with all the team we have. Even the assistant conductors we have in this project are people who suffered from many problems, and they come from regions with very violent conflicts. So it's a really life-changing for them, and we are trying to keep it on because we believe that they know now, people in Lebanon who sing in the choir, they know that we can never succeed if we don't try to find the common things together, if we don't unify our voices, if we don't try to support each other. No one can succeed alone. We have to succeed all together, and we are trying to do this through music, which is the best way in our opinion. And for this, I have to say that for these projects, Fayha Choir won the International Music Council
Music Rights
Award in 2016.
Well, listen, you guys, I think that is such a brilliant project, and I'm so glad I was able to allow you to continue. But I mean, you raised so many issues.
Tell a lot of success stories, but we know we don't have a lot of time. But we have. You can see a lot of documentaries of our work. You can also contact us, and we can answer all your questions. We will put our in the chat now. We will put our website. You can find everything there also.
I think that would be absolutely fantastic. I mean, you raised so many great issues there. I think especially about this idea of, how important it is to nurture conductors, because it's kind of like this sort of ripple effect where how effective a choir can be at allowing people to trust themselves. But this kind of idea of nurturing conductors to enable them to go on and form their own pools of choirs, and it's like this kind of ever-evolving ripple effect of beautifulness. And I think that's I'm sure everyone will have something to say about that in terms of how you can move things on. Important to get people to sing, but also important to create new conductors, new inspirers, new people who can lead projects in the future. For sure. So listen, thank you guys. We'll probably come back to you with some more questions, and it was so fascinating, so brilliant. Maybe could I call upon Carmel maybe to maybe just talk a little bit about your work, Carmel, in relation to social inclusion, the themes that we're talking about.
What a tough act to follow. Thank you. My goodness. It's moments like this where I question why I'm on the panel, but I feel very grateful for being on the panel. I suppose I was first involved in a similar discussion with Sing Ireland in the past year on social inclusion, diversity and equity in choral music. And at the time, the general consensus of the panel was that unfortunately, choral music in Ireland is nowhere near as inclusive as it could be. But since then, it's been really heartening to see that Sing Ireland in particular has been taking massive strides towards that, and that these conversations continue to happen. That's really important. And I suppose more importantly, since that conversation, I have been questioning my own practice and wondering, am I suppose, am I practicing what I preach? So I've been really lucky in that since about 2014, 2015, I've been the musical director with the High Hopes, which is an initiative for people who've been affected by homelessness. So we have members who have spent up to 20 years living on the street, who've struggled with all of the things that go along with homelessness, such as addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and severe mental health issues. And I suppose one thing that the singers in the choir would never accuse me of is killing them with kindness. From the moment I set foot in the door, I very much treated them like I would singers in any other group, and we worked hard, and they absolutely rose to the occasion. And I've been so lucky to see these members thrive over the years, and it's absolutely as a result of the confidence they've gained from singing in this choir, from going from being considered voiceless to being able to express themselves in so many ways, but really beautifully through music, has been an absolute game changer for the people in the choir. We have people now who've returned to, well, I suppose because it's been, I think almost 8 years now, we have people who've returned to full-time education, who have graduated, who have gone back to work full-time, people who are now in their forever homes. And because the choir consists of vulnerable adults, we actually haven't been in operation. We're due to start back in the next few weeks, and I have just been so excited to get back to them, because I've been receiving updates from members over the last 2 years, and it brings me so much joy to see people sending photographs of their new home, you know, of a new pet, of, you know, telling me about their first day at work. And this is where I feel that I've actually probably gained much more from my time with the choir than they have with me. But the High Hopes is always, I suppose, a prime example of just how effective music can be in community building. But it also highlights one real issue that I've experienced with other groups. I've also worked with the Doka Centre in Mountjoy Prison, where I, for a few years, I used to facilitate weekly choral workshops for the women there. And again, the absolute change in those women from day one until we finished up shortly before COVID, unfortunately. I'd really love to have a panel someday where I don't have to mention that word. I apologize. The difference again in confidence was amazing. And a lot of the women there told me that they just really enjoyed being treated like a normal person once a week, being treated with respect, being treated with kindness, and just being allowed to grow at their own pace. But then an issue that we faced was when women there were approaching the end of their sentences, they would approach me and say, is there anything for me on the outside? Is there a choir that I can join? And realistically, we're talking about women who are going to be facing into significant financial hardship on leaving prison, so can't afford the membership fee of a regular choir, because realistically most choirs in the country require a membership fee to stay. Or we're worried about other social barriers. So while we had succeeded in creating this wonderful community through music within the prison, we didn't necessarily have a partner for it on the outside. And of course, I invited members to come participate in any other number of choirs that I was involved with, but it didn't necessarily always follow through. So there's definitely a shortfall there in, I suppose, there being access to a free community choir that's going to, perform music at a high standard, but is also able to cater to perhaps people with, complex needs, or, vulnerable adults and these kinds of things. So again, the High Hopes is a wonderful musical community, but in an extent, it does exist a little bit in isolation from other musical communities in the country. And I suppose something that has been on my mind this past year is how do we get these communities to interact more, and how do we eventually just expand it so that it forms one cohesive community. And I feel that this is where I could absolutely learn an awful lot from Barkev, because I feel that this is a project that has actually succeeded massively in creating a really expansive community. And then I suppose it wouldn't be fair of me to not mention, I have, as Justine mentioned also, I was previously the musical director with Discovery Gospel Choir, which is an intercultural choir based in Dublin City. And the choir the nationalities within the choir span sometimes 30 to 40 different nationalities. They sing in a number of different languages. But I suppose the difference there being is that they focus on this word interculturalism as opposed to multiculturalism. Multiculturalism implies that, you know, there's a lot of cultures coexisting, but not necessarily a lot of exploration of each other's cultures. Whereas interculturalism is about that. It's about learning about the culture of the person who sits beside you every week. It's about learning how to share aspects of your own culture. And I noticed that in the description of the panel that went out, it talked about the language of choirs. And I suppose that's something that I've encountered in Discovery and in other groups is how inclusive singing in different languages can be. Because representation really matters. And obviously at this point, Ireland is a huge, wonderful cultural melting pot. And when people see their own cultures represented in a respectful and I suppose authentic manner, they really respond really wonderfully to that. And then throughout my time with Discovery, I have been so lucky to grow as a musician and to forge connections that I might not have otherwise. And that is where I met my wonderful partner, Justine Dantale, who I work with on a number of projects, and I'm very honored to call her my colleague. And if you've ever wondered, I suppose, about the importance of representation within music, all you need to do is step into a classroom with this woman and watch their faces light up as these children look up at the teacher at the front of the room, who's immensely talented, immensely qualified, and they go, she looks like me. And then Justine will tell them a little bit about her background, where she comes from, and they go, my mum's from Uganda too. And I can see their faces absolutely light up. So it's been an absolute privilege. At the moment, we've been working on a project. It's a songwriting commission to represent Dublin City's Docklands. And from the get-go, when we decided to apply, we knew that we wanted it to be, when we wanted to represent the community of the Docklands, we didn't want it just to be, you know, I suppose the inner city working class community that you might think of. We wanted it to include the vibrant migrant communities that exist there as well. So on that note, I'm going to stop talking and hopefully hand over to Justine, who's well able to describe her own work. And yes, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that, Carmel. I'm so happy to be here. I'm a woman of few words. I prefer singing, actually. I'm Justine from Uganda originally, and I just love the last two speakers already. I see a very good connection between the Arabic music and the African traditional folk music, especially the Ugandan folk music. So anytime I hear the Arabic music, I feel that soulful, and also with the voice, we have that as well. And there's a connection with the Irish traditional music as well. So I love that we are connected through music. I'm not gonna say much, but just to share a little bit about my background. So this weekend I'll be in Derry, maybe teaching a song or two. I've been in Derry before, actually before the city of Derry choral music. When I was in high school in Uganda, I was in an orphanage and we traveled in Northern Ireland, just fundraising. I had a sponsor who sponsored my education. And so that was my safe place as well, singing and sharing my talents with everyone. So I arrived in Ireland 20 years ago now. So I've been living here and I've interacted with a lot of people. I've met great people. I've met Discovery Choir members, and yeah, I'm very emotional right now because I'm so passionate about music, and so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Justine and Carmel. Again, sort of beautiful work. And again, I think you raised quite a lot of sort of topics that we'd love to kind of discuss further. That whole idea of how access is so important, you know, how are there enough opportunities where people can just rock up and sing, you know, these kinds of, and how can we make that more available, more sustainable, and also just in terms of the relationship of language and participation and even repertoire of choirs and the role that that plays in representing people and allowing people a space to come and feel that they're part of something. So thank you both, really wonderful stuff. And the whole business of, you were talking about there, Carmel, about, you know, one of those last things, you know, when you're dealing with, when you're working with homeless people, is that sense of essentially just hope that singing can bring, the act of singing, the act of beginning to sing. It's so important. Fantastic stuff. Shane, can I ask you to pick up the reins and take us to another place?
You certainly may. Thank you so much for inviting me to this incredible seminar. You can see I have taken so many notes already from the brilliant speakers and so many wonderful ideas. You know, I think it's really wonderful to break beyond the boundaries of our own communities, because I think this cross-fertilization is really essential to what we can do as choirs. So I think I'm just going to talk really briefly about my own choral experience, and then I'll hopefully bring in some of the work that we've been doing in Proud Voices and in the Pink Singers as well. So I grew up in Singapore, where being gay has until recently been illegal. And I came to the UK to study for university. I'd until then been singing in choirs in school and in church. And at university, I also sang in several other choirs. But when I started work, it kind of got put to the side. And it was only when a friend invited me to say, look, you know, we need to meet more gay people. Would you like to join a choir with me? That I joined the Pink Singers. This was back in 2002. It was a real revelation to me, actually, because until then, I'd never realized what power a community choir had to both build and spread social cohesion. The Pink Singers is an LGBT choir, so you would have thought that it is intrinsically diverse, and indeed it is. But building that community takes a lot of work. You know, it's about sort of laying the foundation for different voices to be heard. It's about creating that safe space. It's about ensuring that people are supported as they go through that process. A lot of people come to the choir to learn about themselves, and they may not necessarily have a definition of who they are in terms of their sexuality or gender, but they learn to discover that for themselves while they're in the group. And this doesn't happen naturally. And there has to be some coherence and planning involved in that whole process. So my own experience was coming to this choir, not really being very out at all, but suddenly finding that safe space and discovering that there was a community of people around me with whom I could take away these filters was very, very liberating. And it's an experience a lot of people go through as well when they join the choir. Once you have that, though, then there are lots of things that can be explored. So in terms of the music that we sing, much of it is chosen by the choir. And there's often an emotional connection to a particular piece of music, which then enables, I guess, storytelling to happen. And when the choir performs publicly, then this is a way of spreading that message of diversity and inclusion to the wider public. I was recently up in Manchester listening to the Manchester Proud Chorus, and they had their 22nd anniversary, and they sang several songs, one of which included This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. I just found it really inspirational to watch people perform a song that they truly believe in. You can sort of see the passion and fervor and ardor and the meaning of the words really resonates with them and obviously with the audience as a result of that. So there's that real power in being able to tell stories as well. So in 2009, I set up Proud Voices UK and Ireland, it tries to bring all of the LGBT choirs across the UK and Ireland together. And currently we have 57 members, member choirs across the whole of the British Isles. We organize festivals every 2 years, started in 2013. And then the most recent one was 2019 in Cardiff. Unfortunately, obviously COVID hit, as you as everyone is undoubtedly going to mention. So some of the momentum was lost, but there's still a lot of enthusiasm to bring our voices together. So do check us out on YouTube and the Proud Voices Choir's YouTube channel, and there's a virtual festival that we put together there. I guess one of the big subjects that we as a choir, as a group of choirs talk about is sort of intersectionality, because it's not just really about being LGBT, it's about all the different intersections with different identities that affect how people can participate, see themselves represented, and also represent themselves in different choirs. As a group of choirs, we're pretty diverse. So we have lots of people from different ethnic backgrounds, different ages, different socioeconomic sort of statuses. But there's always room for improvement. And I think one of the areas that we recognize that we could do better is with anti-racism. And so this has been a big project amongst all of our choirs over the last 3 or 4 years, really since Black Lives Matter. So we're in the process now of trying to find best practice, including sort of laying the foundation for conversations around race, however imperfect they may be. In 2013, I set up the Proud Voices Asia network, which basically brings together the Asian LGBT choirs. And there are 37 at the moment, based mainly in China and Japan, but also with choirs in Vietnam, in India, in Singapore, and in Turkey. We also have our biannual festivals, the most recent one being in Tokyo in 2019. I guess this is where I just want to talk about the nature of choral music. Certainly it is a very colonial thing, as Barkev mentioned earlier. You know, a lot of the way that the music is notated, is sort of arranged. A lot of the sort of music theory behind it is very colonial, and so some of the language then comes across into other languages as well. So one of the areas that we're trying to address at the moment is transgender inclusion in choirs. And in Asia, the word, certainly in China and in the Chinese language, the words for soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, which are not intrinsically gendered, is 你高声, 你低声, 男高声, 男低声. So basically what that means is soprano is women's upper voice and alto is women's lower voice in direct translation. So we're trying to find ways to express this in our own language that tries to do away with the gender in order to be inclusive to people who are transgender. Gosh, quite a lot to say. A couple of things that I just wanted to respond to. So the first is really to Barkev to say that, you know, the idea of authenticity in music is a really interesting one. We talk about queerness, for instance, in Asia. But a lot of the frameworks that we use, a lot of the language that we use is based on the Anglo-American idea of queerness. So there is, you know, as a queer choir, we're dealing with the intrinsic structures, the colonial structures of music, as well as the colonial structures of queerness. And these festivals that we have enable different Asian countries to come together, and we try to create a space which enables us to explore both of these things outside the more traditional sort of frameworks, Anglo-American frameworks. And the other thing I wanted to say is, like, I think the idea of capacity building in creating choirs is crucial. I also happen to be one of the board members of the European LGBT Choral Association, which is Legato, and our aim is really to try to build LGBT choirs in every town across Europe. How we're going to do that is a big question, and I'd be really open to learning how you do it, Barkev. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cian. It is kind of extraordinary how far-reaching the whole aspect of singing and choral work can be, both in relation to health and well-being, but also in terms of social politics and so on. I think everyone's raising such fundamentally important issues, and the I suppose the resonance and the side effects, or even the direct effects of singing within certain groups of people, and the effect that it can have on society and people individually, but also politically. So thank you so much. That was so super. I just want to call upon Dermot, maybe just to give our last sort of chat, Dermot, and then we'll open it up for a general discussion. Thank you, Dermot.
Thanks so much, Brian. And I'm absolutely fascinated and inspired by everyone's contribution so far. Actually, I'd love to very quickly just talk a little bit about what Sing Ireland has done. But before that, what struck me during the conversation, and to be maybe a bit contrarian, so singing, I believe, and I think we all believe, is a really powerful mechanism: collective singing, choral singing, group singing. But it can be used on the flip end, like anything powerful, in ways that are unhelpful for social cohesion. You know, I'm imagining at the moment with war in Ukraine, how group singing can be used as a form of oppression. On the other side of that, it can be used as something of a form of defiance. With that in mind, I'm thinking about something like the Estonian so-called singing revolution back to 1987, around that time, where the Soviet oppression of Estonia was really manifest in their defiance through song as a society, as they celebrated collectively in the songs that were censored under Soviet regime. That really was a way for them to express themselves. And even on our own island, I'm thinking of you know, maybe nationalistic songs and things like, I don't know, Come Out You Black and Tans and Fields of Athenry and those kind of things, and how they can be used both as a celebration of nationalistic culture, but also unhelpfully when in the wrong context. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I think I'm struck by the fact that the brilliant projects that we've heard here, Barkev and Roula, Chien with your projects, Carmel and Justine, you know, they're thinking about these cultural issues, and they're trying to respond to what is needed to see real equality, diversity, and inclusion, and actually bring people on a journey of how they can connect together in the best way, which I think is what was evident in all of those projects. So really briefly, wanted to say Sing Ireland has been on a journey with this. What Carmel said is absolutely true. I think there's a recognition in Ireland that we aren't as outward looking as we might be from an equality, diversity and inclusion point of view. We really need to make efforts to see action that will change our choral groups, and that what Sing Ireland has actually tried to do is develop policies both for the sector as a whole, and then really bring about action that choirs can see and can take with them week on week, and see that change over time. And for us, that started a little bit over the past few years on looking inward at Sing Ireland as an organization and things that we can do. So for instance, over the past year or so, we've been looking at bursaries for our Irish Youth Choir. We're the parent organisation of the Irish Youth Choirs, to see literally a changing face of the Irish Youth Choirs, and how we can start to address inequality there, to access to the choirs. As well as that, at our choral conducting course recently, we had a talk on this very issue, on equality, and also on gender issues around female composers and their representation. And we're particularly proud on trying to address that kind of issue in terms of backgrounds for commissions that we undertake for composers and so on. And I just wanted to finish with just a little sharing of screen to I'm sharing the Song of Defiance here, but that is not my intention actually. But let me just go to the right thing. But this is really interesting. This is just on the, it's what I Googled it because I was reminded of it during the conversation. But I just want to go here to our equality, diversity and inclusion page. I'll put a link in the chat. But just to say what is here is, and it's informed by policy from the Arts Council of Ireland and also the Arts Council of Northern Ireland on their equality and human rights and diversity schemes and policies. And then we've brought it into a toolkit, which is, I guess, the most interesting and important thing here, that choral groups and for them to see what our policy is as Sing Ireland, but then also an action plan, what they want to see changed. We're trying to do that at Sing Ireland, and we'd love to see that replicated in singing groups across the country. And I know some are already doing this. So the policy is there, as I say, but I'll just scoot down here to talk about what your goals might be, what considerations there are, strategies for change, and to try and then, most importantly for me, this box tells us what are we going to do that's actually going to see change. And how do we measure that? And how do we go, okay, we're nowhere with it, or we've moved it on a little bit, or we've moved it on hugely. So I think unless we start to make those kind of tangible changes, you know, I think a lot of people have a lot of goodwill in relation to this, but it's really about bringing us to that next stage. So look, there's a lot in that document, and I'll share that in the chat, but again, inspired and fascinated by everything here. And thank you so much to the festival for hosting a brilliant discussion here today.
Thank you, Dermot. Again, some wonderful thoughts there to share. I think what would be really quite nice is to allow a little bit of time just now for anyone who's part of this who's been listening to this discussion. If you have any specific questions that you would like to ask members of the panel, or even just to discuss in a sort of open forum with the panel, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat window of your Zoom, and we can maybe take them on board. I'll maybe just come back to a couple of things and maybe just have the panel's kind of views on just certain key aspects which have kind of come up in part of that discussion. One of the things actually that you touched upon, actually, Cian, was about something that got me thinking about the hierarchy of notation and sort of methodologies for learning and so on. And I just wondered what ways have you gone about teaching people how to sing, or what to sing, or what are those methodologies? And this is a kind of a question to the panel in general. What are those methodologies that you employ? Because obviously not everyone reads Western music, and you know, and I just wonder what other kinds of ways of learning do you involve, or do you engage with? That's a kind of open question to the panel.
I don't mind kicking it off, but what I would say is that there's obviously, you know, Asia is a very big continent, so there's a very wide range of experience when it comes to music, and obviously this is not just between countries, also within countries. Certainly in East and Southeast Asia, a lot of the music education is based on the Western model. And so even though there is obviously strong local traditions around music, the music teaching is based on the Western model. I mean, I come from Singapore, which is it was a colony, and therefore, you know, going up through school and learning, you know, piano and flute and then singing, all of that was taught in the very sort of traditional way, well, the Western traditional way. So the thing is, choral singing itself, as Barkev said, is actually very much a sort of an Anglo-American European tradition. So the history of choral singing in East Asia is actually not quite so developed, and so it's very easy to slip into using Western tools. I think, you know, then what that comes down to at the end, then, in terms of practice, is music is taught as per sheet music, as you would to acquire, say, here in the UK, or is taught by ear, which is also very simple and very straightforward, and allows for, I think, accessibility in ways that people who don't necessarily have a formal music education may be able to sort of contact. I'd be interested in finding out, actually, in places where perhaps music education isn't quite so well developed, what other strategies that they use. So I don't know, maybe Justine might be able to illustrate some of that.
Sorry, Hassan, could you repeat that for me, please?
I was going to say, you know, so I don't know what music education is like in Uganda, for instance, but how do you teach music if people come from a different cultural background, if their experience of music and singing communal music is different from, say, you know, something that's written on a piece of sheet music?
Yeah, usually what we do is we start off by getting everyone to sing in unison, for example, and you do a call and response. So this is what I did in the past. So the director of the choir would sing a line and we respond. And then from there you progress on into different harmonies, but it's just, you listen to the song first, and then get everyone to sing in unison, and then you can start off in harmony lines. But it's usually call and response. Every choir I've been to, because not most of us have studied music. Yeah. So I don't know how you do it yourself. So,
I guess the other question I wanted to ask you, really, and this is something that you know, we've been exploring as a group. So I think so in LGBT choirs, you know, we've been looking both at diversifying our membership within the choir, but also looking at creating choirs that are that bring together particular communities. So, you know, for instance, we don't really have a lot of Black representation within our choirs as they exist, but you know, the same question is like, why do people join an LGBT choir when they could just join a regular choir? It's because sometimes you seek that community. And maybe what we should be doing as a choral community is to create these spaces that enable, you know, music to be performed in a way that makes sense for a particular community. And I love what you're doing with the gospel choir, but some of the conversations I've been having with, say, you know, the Black communities in London is that gospel is not necessarily part of their music tradition either. And I'm just wondering whether how much of a hurdle it is to find something or a musical style that brings people together.
I wonder, could I bring in
with the Discovery Choir, it was the interest was mainly not music in the beginning. It was to get people together who had the same interest. Yeah. So we had different backgrounds of music styles. I would have been into choral music, others would have been gospel music, others classical. we had ages 80 to 18, so it was a mixture. So it evolved as we went on. But first of all, the attraction was the interculturalism, just to get everyone to sing. But then we came to, you know, to where we want to be, you know, gospel and a gospel style. But it was a mixture of kinds of music.
Could I maybe just bring Barkev in on this? I think you were looking to say something there, Barkev.
Yes, I want to explain how we work here. Usually in the Arab countries, nobody reads music. And it's the first time in their life they sing in a choir, especially with harmony. I'm using the harmony always because the Arabic music is based on monodic. We teach them every phrase, every sentence, and we believe that when we repeat all the time, and they start to sing in harmony. And we are trying to become professionals someday, to spread the professionalism in the Arab countries. When somebody repeats all the time, he learns everything by heart. And we work all together. For instance, the sopranos should wait when the basses are learning. They should learn all the parts, because not only everybody sings his part, it's not okay with us. And usually we don't use microphones, and we don't record anything in a studio. Everything is done natural, and even the balance that we make, it should be 100% natural. It's a little bit difficult, but very very good. I have worked with professionals in foreign countries, but I love to work with non-professionals. You feel like you are creating something from nothing, and they start to love music and become a part of their life, and they change their plans of life to not leave the choir. Imagine.
Fantastic. Yeah, actually, if I can just come in on that discussion as well, maybe something that I'm very passionate about myself in relation to is, if you think of what, say, notation is per se, it's like a symbol, and this symbol means you do this. It's just a set of instructions. I think the breadth and scale of how that interaction works between showing something, a symbol, be it a note or anything, and the effect that would then have on the sound that they produce with their mouths. I think there's a lot to be explored in that. And actually, I recently came across a deaf choir who essentially sing silently, and the way that they work, I think, opened up a whole new kind of dimension of understanding about how we can put something in front of some people and it will cause them to do something in sound or singing, and how we construct that. I'll actually put the link to this little video, actually. So it's like a sort of silent opera, where this singers who are deaf, but also how those sounds are extended through their gesture and their faces and their movement and so on. So I think there's a lot of scope in that, in terms of how we explore that. I'm just looking to see if there are any questions coming through from the attendees. There doesn't seem to be. If I could maybe just point everyone in a certain other direction, just in terms before we kind of move on. The whole idea of I suppose what I'd like to hear from maybe the panel is, what are the hurdles of being able to develop your practice further, and what are your own personal kind of ambitions in relation to the projects that you're pursuing going forward? And maybe we could just hear from each of you individually just what you think are the barriers between you extending your practice, and just what are your hopes in some ways to see how things progress for you. Maybe we could start with Carmel, maybe.
Of course. I mean, I suppose it's probably the obvious answer, but one of the biggest issues, I suppose, that everyone faces, but particularly in relation to you know, like kind of like these social projects or community projects, it's funding. It's finding the money. You know, it's convincing organizations, convincing the Arts Council, convincing the government of the viability and the value of your projects on an ongoing basis. You don't do it once, you spend your whole time I suppose fighting to validate the work that you're doing. And if arts funding was infinite, you know, and in an ideal world, I mean the projects I can imagine and how wonderful I suppose the singing landscape in Ireland would be, it would just be phenomenal. But that is, I suppose, the biggest barrier that everybody faces. I mean, when it comes to the High Hopes, I volunteer my time for rehearsals, you know, because we're lacking in budget a lot of the time, and I have very many musical friends who volunteered their time for other equally valid projects, and I suppose it's that crossover between community and professional music. There's money at one end of it and there isn't at the other.
Fantastic. Maybe I could bring in Dermot, maybe it seems to be a good link into you, the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Brian. And look, I think for me the biggest challenge is that it needs constant and regular and I suppose continuous attention, because of course the issues change as they go by, and also you need to be really aware. I mean, I'm thinking of projects we're running ourselves, and how do you reach out? And okay, we ran a bursary scheme for the Irish youth choirs this year, but and that changed the makeup of the choir in a really positive way due to people's backgrounds, and literally changed the face of the choir and what the choir looked like. But I think there are many issues around creating opportunity and equality being catering to people's needs and what they require to have equality, rather than a one size fits all. And I think that's an ongoing journey, and it needs repeated attention, because particularly when we're looking at a landscape in Ireland where we aren't as inclusive as we might be. And I don't mean the choral sector particularly. I think that's a general comment. I think, you know, with the choral sector, we need to put renewed attention on it, so that actually we see the change, because that often used phrase of, if they can't see it, they can't be it. And if they can't experience people with a similar background to themselves, they really won't. So we've got to see that happening on small scale, breaking out into true equality. So that's an enormous challenge and an ongoing one, but one I think I feel an enthusiasm around, because I think we can see, particularly with group singing, a huge potential for social change. One final thought is that we need to build the body of evidence and support around it. I'm involved in the University of Limerick has a Singing for Social Inclusion research cluster. Some brilliant work by many colleagues internationally, but led by Dr. Helen Phelan and Dr. Hilary Moss at the university. And I was at an event recently on singing for health and well-being that they launched international journal academic articles and research on, and building that case. We know anecdotally singing is good for you. We know anecdotally singing makes a difference to people's lives. We know it contributes to social cohesion, but if we want to see policy change, if we want to see real societal change, we need that body of evidence to be continually growing. So it's brilliant to feel a bit of enthusiasm that there is so much of that coming, and that is being contributed to.
I think you're 100% right there, Dermot. I mean, we're probably all engaged in this line of activity for lots of different reasons. One of them is the sheer joy of it, and collecting the evidence, the hardcore evidence of how this feeds into politics of well-being through all sorts of government level, health levels, is so critically important. Maybe Justine, maybe just maybe pick up on that a little bit, just about what the barriers are for you going forward.
The economy. I just feel in the past I had plenty of time. I didn't have so many responsibilities, but as a mother and having jobs, I'm not able to volunteer my time or to take part in different community events, social networking. So I feel like it's hard to manage your time if you're working at the same time. I don't know how we can resolve that. Maybe I don't know, having some resources available, for online resources maybe, and we can do that in our free time. And one of the other barriers, I feel, there's lack of training in diversity and inclusion in these spaces, for example. So for the organizations organizing the events, I think there's need for training and continuous development. That would be my input. Yeah.
Thank you, Justine. And Cian, maybe.
Thank you. So I'm basically echoing what other people are saying, but I think EDI, equality, diversity, inclusion, is often reliant on goodwill, and perhaps too reliant on goodwill. I think there needs to be organizational structures that are enabled to be supported, and funding to enable people to implement change. And at the moment, it's you know, particularly with the cost of living crisis and all of the stuff that's going on, I agree with Justine. You know, these things become luxuries when they should not be luxuries, and we end up jettisoning their activities. A few other things that that come to mind in terms of challenges. Certainly in Asia, it's a real sort of polyglot of languages. So we end up conversing with each other in English, which is itself problematic. So there are issues there. We'd love to build, I guess, a better structure. At the moment, we're a fairly loose conglomeration of choirs, but it would be nice to have some kind of formalized structure to enable sort of our experiences to be shared more robustly and recorded and distributed in ways that would be beneficial, not just to us, but to other choirs. And I also just want to highlight that there is some research going on, certainly for LGBT choirs in particular, at the Department of Ethnomusicology in Trondheim. So Dr. Thomas Hilda is doing quite a lot of work there on LGBT choirs and their effect on social cohesion in particular. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Ian. And Barkev, Roula?
Yes, okay, so there were always challenges actually since we started. It could be cultural, economic, whatever. I remember when I joined the choir 19 years ago, my parents were not really happy about it because for them singing is not something, I won't say legal, but it's not something we really encourage our children to do. So, and now they attend all the concerts of the choir, and they are here to help us sell our albums. So we are really changing in the cultures. And now, for example, we had also challenges for finding arrangements for Arab choral music, because we didn't have. Now we have a big archive of Arab songs for a cappella. Sometimes we had some conflicts and wars, so people cannot like reach the rehearsal. Nowadays we have a big economic crisis in Lebanon. Also, the participants cannot pay their taxi to come to the rehearsal. But well, what we do every time to solve every kind of problem is to work more and to keep working. We have now three branches of Fayha Choir in Lebanon nowadays, and with the other social projects we have, like we are doing around 19 rehearsals per week and all over Lebanon. So we just keep working, and things become better every time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Just before I bring the whole thing to, we're sort of running out of time rapidly. I'll maybe just get, Donal, I'm going to bring you in on this as well, if that's okay. Just your own thoughts on how you see things moving forward and what your own perceptions of that are.
Well, Brian, thank you very much. And before I make final comments, my head is kind of blown by the contributions that I've heard, because it's just so it's so much more than coming together to sing. I think that's the main message that I've heard today from all the different experiences. You know, it did strike me, I don't want to go down the political route here really, but it did strike me from several conversations or several comments that were being made. My goodness, if we had our politicians sitting in the same room, listening to this discussion and listening to the power of music to bring people together and to offer them experiences. I mean, we talked about safe environments. We talked about the voiceless finding a voice. We talked about understanding interculturalism. We talked about so many things that go way beyond music itself, and it's utterly fascinating, but it also is utterly challenging. to us who are involved in it. So it's not a self-congratulatory thing or patting ourselves on the back. It's the very opposite for me that I'm hearing. It's what are the challenges then that these conversations provide for us to look afresh at what we do, look afresh at how we do it, and understand the immense consequences of people coming into the same space to share something very personal, and that's their voice. So what I'm hearing today are huge positives from everybody's experiences, but just really serious challenges as well. I mean, and something that was just touched on, for example, and what gave rise to the theme of in inclusion and cohesion through singing was the whole issue of language. And you know, we've just mentioned so many things that we could elaborate on and spend a lot of time talking about, because I mean, when we're talking about, and Cian, I was fascinated by your description earlier of the language that's used in terms of voice parts and soprano, alto, tenor, basses, and how that translates into languages that you would use in Asia, you know, and in terms of defining who sings what and where, and even to explore that and to have a common agreed approach to that is not necessarily you know, a very long process or lengthy process, but it's a very important one in terms of us as directors and facilitators developing a language that is genuinely inclusive, and that through either lack of thought on our part or lack of awareness, that we would somehow cause the experience to be exclusive in any way whatsoever. So I think things like that are really, really important. And we mentioned earlier about, I mean, just another aside, I mean, for Barkev to have, first of all, had such opposition to what he was doing, then to have it embraced. And then, as Roula said, then people who were originally against or hesitant about supporting are now standing, selling CDs or whatever it happens to be, you know, or coming to concerts. All of those things are wonderful. They're just wonderful. And if I could just touch on something Justine said as well. I mean, I was moved, Justine, to hear you say that you've been to Derry long before we had thought of any choir festival happening here, when you were here as a singer and fundraising for your choir. I mean, how wonderful. What a world. What you know, what a small and wonderful world that we live in. And to hear that, and now you're coming back to lead a workshop as part of the City of Derry International Choir Festival. Applauds to that, Justine. What eloquence, and how powerful, just in that is a lesson to us all of how powerful music truly is, and how universal it is, what a small world we live in, and what privileges we feel and live every day by being such musicians. And my final comment is, Barkev, when you said you work 365 days a year and singing goes on all the time, applauds to that as well, because that takes some energy, some work. So those are my few thoughts, Brian. I didn't mean to go on as long as that, but it's been truly fascinating and quite mind-blowing.
Not at all. Donald, thank you so much. And we're at the point of kind of wrapping things up. I would like to say it's been a total privilege actually to share this virtual space with you all. I think this, the actual bringing together of people who are so engaged in the work that they're doing in relation to singing is just so fundamentally inspiring. To hear each other talk about the work and the concerns of each of our organizations and so on is such a brilliant thing, and inspiring, encouraging, empowering. Donal, and I'd like to thank you for pulling this together, because I really do think this is such a great platform to really explore these ideas. And actually, you know, of all the terrible things there are about Zoom, one of the brilliant things about it is being able to have this kind of international context to things, and that's been super illuminating. I'll take many things away from this personally. how to trust yourself through singing, which I love the idea of that, and perhaps more importantly, how we should all embrace the quarter tone. So listen, thank you all for taking part, and continued success and good luck with all the work that you're doing. Peace.
Shalom. Thank you, Brian, and thank you to all our panelists. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for being part of the 10th edition of City of Derry International Choir Festival. Barkev wants to say something.
Can I say something? We have built our Arab choral network. If anybody wants to know what is going on in the Arab countries, you can enter the website arabchoralnetwork.com. And we usually, Fayha Choir, organize international festivals in Lebanon every 2 years, but unfortunately, after the COVID, we couldn't. With the partnership of Polyfolia International, unfortunately, Jacques Vanel, you know him, passed away. And we are trying to have members to the IFCM and the Europa Cantat to bring choirs to be members, not only Arab countries, even in Armenia.
Wonderful. Can I maybe just as we finish up, perhaps Fiona, maybe you could gather up the various links that people are sending through, and maybe we can circulate it via email or some methodology of kind of just sharing some of the projects that people are involved with, you know. Okay, guys, have a wonderful festival. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Yeah, and thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.